The Active Inclusion Network is a partnership between AHEAD and Cork Education and Training Board. This partnership involved AHEAD working with staff from 5 PLC colleges in Cork ETB to develop their skills around inclusive practice. This video tells the story of the network.
The initial setting up of the Active Inclusion Project took place with a meeting with John Fitzgibbon, who's the Director of Further Education with Cork ETB, and Anne Heelan from AHEAD, Director of AHEAD, and myself, where we came together and we came up with a plan to bring all the FE colleges in Cork ETB together in a collaborative grouping so that we could meet regularly and devise a plan in order to increase the inclusion of students with disabilities in all of our FE colleges going forward.
She came with the proposal. She came with the idea that we needed to do something. We needed to do it for people with disabilities, for people with different learning needs, but also very strongly with the view that by adopting a universal design for learning, and that it was truly universal and it would benefit all our learners.
Okay, the Action Inclusion Network is a network of PLC colleges, a total of 5 of them within Cork ETB, and it's based on action learning principles, and that really is an alternative to CPD, where you go away on a day's training and you learn about a certain thing and you come back to the workplace. It's based on action learning, which is a group of people doing similar jobs, working in the same kind of learning environment, who come together over a period of time to share what they know, to share ideas, learn from each other, and to collectively solve any problems that are coming up amongst the group.
For the first time in Cork ETB, all of our FE colleges have sat inside in a room and worked collaboratively as a team in order to come up with the best possible type of service.
All of these staff had a designated disability officer role, but it was a fairly informal designation and tended to be tagged on to another job. And they were all struggling on their own individually to solve problems and set up systems. So it made sense, and we were invited by Cork ETB to come down, work with people collectively and set up a network to support their staff development around inclusion. So what we actually did was meet with the group in the first instance. It was voluntary. People were asked if they want to come along and take part. And we talked to them about what they felt they were doing that was good and where they needed to improve. And we also identified their development needs with them. And from that, then we set up a structured programme of events throughout the year, which involved bi-monthly meetings of the network, which were fairly informal and addressed particular issues that were arising in their workplace. And then as a parallel process, there were a number of what we call spotlight seminars delivered by experts, really to feed into that whole pool of knowledge and expertise around inclusion.
The support that we've had from each other as part of the group, there's a network there now that you can bounce things off, you can ask questions if you're unsure where to find documents, policies, assistive technology is changing all the time. We're not trained in that. We don't know where to go to find information. And I suppose these meetings and at the network, we're hearing about these things. It's the only place we're hearing about them. So really, it's invaluable that we keep hearing about them.
We often feel like we're a bit siloed, the different colleges work separately, so this really brought us all together, and there's great strength in collaboration, and even having AHEAD and all the expert bodies and access to research and everything like that has been invaluable.
For the first time, really, it's recognising the importance of the disability support within further education. It's clarifying maybe what our role is, and it's giving us some kind of hope of support going forward, that we can make things better, not just for ourselves as professionals, but for the whole student body that we work with.
What started kind of tentatively as just maybe an exploration has actually ended up being something very kind of formative and very practical, actually. That, there isn't a meeting that I haven't gone to that I haven't taken something away from.
AHEAD worked with staff in the 5 colleges to develop their skills around assessing the needs of students with disabilities and providing appropriate supports. But there was also a strong focus placed on Universal Design for Learning, or UDL for short. UDL is a framework for inclusive teaching and assessment that that aims to cater for the wide diversity of students now entering our classrooms. Network members undertook AHEAD's digital badge for universal design in teaching and learning to find out more.
The digital badge was brilliant, and in fact it was a far bigger impact than I'd anticipated. It was a short online program or blended learning program that we developed at UCD on universal design that involved half a day's training followed by 5 or 6 hours of online learning, and then people had to go away and make a positive change to their practice in a small way. And it was really brilliant because I think it gave people a good insight and understanding of what universal design was. But the best thing of all about it was that they went away, thought about what they were doing, reflected on what they learned throughout the network, and they all made quite staggering changes to their practice. Some of them were very small, some of them were bigger, but they were all innovative and they were all imaginative, and they all addressed the students' needs.
If we can make learning accessible to somebody who has a disability, who has had challenges and has challenges in terms of accessing that learning, it'll always work for the person who doesn't have the challenges. It makes the learning easier.
Doing the digital badge for universal design for learning, one of the things that really struck me most was the little changes that I made. It didn't just benefit, the students with disabilities. These changes that I made benefited everybody, and I was surprised that I was actually hearing it had the biggest impact maybe on people that I hadn't expected. It's the mature learners returning to education after 20 years, and I suppose the very diverse group of learners that we have. It's learning how to make everybody feel included.
Well, I've noticed in the classroom there is a greater need, much more diversity in the classroom, and I need to be in touch with that as a teacher, but also personally I've been teaching for a few years now, and I'd like to be involved in something new, something different to freshen up my career, and it's certainly been very positive in that.
Very much hands-on approach. So getting the students to take ownership of their own learning, that was definitely the big thing. And that has empowered them and give them more confidence, and, kind of handing it back to them almost, going, this is not just my class, this is your class. And always, the one thing I definitely took from this, I suppose, experience as well, was asking the students, going, this is what I'm thinking of doing. How do you feel about that?
At the start, I was going, oh God, a report, a case study, it's going to take a lot of work, but it was invaluable. I introduced a video tutorial for students that didn't have the software at home to do their bookkeeping. It was a very simple thing, but I suppose it provided such a support for them at their own pace, and the digital badge for me was fabulous, and it was something that I would look into for other modules next year. Just providing support, simple, and I just hadn't done it before.
I've been able to adapt my mindset and look at things differently, look at students differently. I'm thinking of an instance, there was a student asleep on the desk, and in the past I might have reacted instinctively to that, but it was pointed out to me that this student has autism. They probably needed time out, they need to centre themselves, and that's how they manage that. So having known that, I can take a little space and I won't just react.
All of the 15 people that came to the network and took part in the network are now what we call early adopters of universal design. So they are people who understand the process and really are committed to it and can see the benefits in their own practice. They're going back into their colleges, and they now have the equipment via the digital badge, because they not only did the digital badge, but they're also now trained up as facilitators of the digital badge. So they can go back into their institution and work with other staff who maybe want to take part, and spread the word about inclusion and universal design, and enable other staff within the college to do the digital badge and to bring about small changes in their practice.
The fact that we've got a cohort of, I would say, extremely strong and vocal advocates now for this as an approach, and that those advocates are spread across the 5 PLC colleges, and that is a good starting point. I think the challenge now, and that is to take it outside of that relatively small group, that relatively encompassed surrounds of the pilot, and disseminated and implemented across a much wider range of our further education and training provision.
You know, the access to the training that we got, I would love to see that being, I suppose, provided for more people within the colleges, because that means change can come about. You know, it's fine talking about change, it's fine talking about making the learning accessible for everybody, but it's the teachers across the board that need the access to the information to make that change happen.
I was trying to promote UDL in the school and trying to portray the advantages of it and the benefits, and I suppose going forward for the network, you know, I'd like to see that, you know, flowing onto a whole Cork ETB, you know, outlook, and that we're all singing from the same page, that there's transparency on how, on documents that we get students to fill out, that it's the same policies, procedures within each college, and that all students, not just within our college, but all students of Cork ETB are treated fairly no matter what college they attend.
Yes, I think even though I've adapted my mindset, there still are some quite closed minds out there, and I think we've gone a certain way down the road, and maybe the next step is for us to encourage others to come along with us.
It needs to have a ripple effect now. It needs to go across the board. We need to start actively engaging other teachers within the building that we're in and within the colleges that we're in. I think a lot of them see kind of UDL still as kind of out there, and it's another approach, as to kind of saying maybe it is actually the approach.
I hope this is really just the start of things. I feel like this is just the start of things, that us coming together, sharing this experience, sharing our knowledge is actually building something from the grassroots up. I don't feel there was a structure in place automatically that somebody could just step into the role and know what to do. And I think us coming together is really, really important for putting a structure on it, for sharing best practice. And I suppose one of the most exciting things that I've learned, I suppose, during the course of this pilot has been the universal design for learning, and how important that is going to be if we can roll it out in our individual colleges and really make this, I suppose, part of the ethos of the colleges that we have.
An awful lot of what provides kind of value in this project, I think, and as well as others, but this one in particular, is that it becomes part and parcel of the normal conversation about how do we teach? How do we teach better so that our learners can learn easier and can achieve more? And it just becomes part of that conversation that you have in the staff room, you have over a cup of coffee, you have when you're discussing the development of assignments or exam papers and so on like that. That it's just something, it becomes natural, it becomes normal.
I think at the moment it is being disseminated throughout the Cork ETB in the autumn, and I think that the other ETBs will be very interested in it as a model of peer-to-peer learning and as a mechanism for disseminating good practices and sharing good practice about inclusion and diversity across the whole of the ETB.
You go to Galway, you go to Mayo, you go to Donegal, you come to Dublin. That diversity is present right across those regions. So a universal design for learning, this type of approach is equally applicable to every ETB. Dare I say it's equally applicable to any teaching or learning environment.
If you would like to find out more about the Active Inclusion Network or the work of AHEAD, then get in touch or visit www.ahead.ie.